Alright, so I'm going to show you how I do this sort of fast and dirty bevel style letters. If you like clean graffiti, you may not like this video. If you like grimy stuff, this may be for you. Also, it should be a good intro to how to do bevel letters, or at least a decent one. So let's get into it. So first off, I personally find blocky letters to be the easiest to learn and pull off bevels. I don't really do a whole lot of like really rounded stuff these days. I know those are a little more reliant on specific shading techniques, so this should be easy if you want to learn bevels. So since my whole fill-in and everything is going to be really loose, I'm going to be using my lighter fill color to do the sketch so that it sort of blends in with the fill. So once I have the sketch done, I'll connect the corners, and as you can see, I fucked up here on the B. That line isn't supposed to go there, so I would recommend putting on these little corner caps. They're like little triangles. That's where your center line is going to connect to the edge of the letter. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's where sort of like the bars that go over, like if you see how the top and bottom bars of the B extend out, or the tops of the U, or the edges of the S. So once you have all of that in there, you have all your edges all your corners connected and your corner caps on there. Then you're going to go in and add the center line. So then once all your center line's in, I'll take a step back and make sure I didn't mess anything else up. So as you can see, it's kind of roughed out now. So for this, I'm just going to do a 2-color fill-in. So I'm going to use a light and a darker shade of gray. And so basically you just need to choose which side the light is going to hit from. So I'm going to say the light is in the top right corner. So that would illuminate the top edges and the right sides of the letters. So I'll fill all that in. I'm doing this whole thing with one cap. It's the Montana Pro cap. I'm even going to fill in with it because I want to be able to see the sort of side-to-side strokes on the fill-in. That's going to add a bit of texture to the letters. And this piece is also pretty small, so I needed a fine cap to be able to see those. So when I fill in, I'm going to choose sort of one of the edges and do my side-to-side lines. Those are going to follow that same pattern. So now the light side is all filled in. I'm going to go in and start hitting the darks. So when I'm filling in the darker side, I'm going to do the same thing, like choosing an angle, but it's going to be the opposite of whatever's on the other side. So if you see, my light gray goes in one direction, and then my dark gray goes in the opposite direction. I find that kind of adds a little bit of depth, and it also kind of gives it a little bit of more of an intentional look to it. So even though we're filling in really loose, we're trying to do some things to keep it so that it's not just sloppy for the sake of being sloppy. Like, it does have some structure to it. So once I finished filling in all the darks, I found the dark gray covered way faster than the light gray. So I'm going to go back in with the light gray and sort of fill it in a little bit more and try to get it to match the dark gray. I still want to be able to see the side-to-side strokes, but as you can see, the light gray, they're much, much more visible than the dark gray. So I'm going to fix that up. Okay, so the lights and the darks are all filled in. I'm going to move on to the outline. So with the outline, I'm still going to keep it pretty loose. I'm going to follow, obviously, the letters, but I'm not going to worry too much about little errors here and there. I like the look of a messy piece, but has some kind of structure to it. So with painting in a style like this, you're free to make mistakes and just sort of let them become part of the piece. If you're familiar with the movement called wabi-sabi, if you're not, I would look it up. It's sort of along the lines of embracing imperfections and things like that. So that's where a lot of the influence comes with being able to paint like this. It also takes a lot of pressure off. I like doing really clean stuff sometimes, but it's much more rare these days. I'm going to leave some spaces to put in some cracks here and there as well. I'm also going to add a little drop shadow. You could do 3Ds on this style too if you wanted to, but I like a drop shadow for a bevel letter. So although I like to leave it loose, there are some areas where maybe I don't quite like how loose it came out, especially right here on this B. So I'm going to cut back a couple little mistakes that were a little bit too far from what I originally intended. Now that the outline is done, I'm going to throw an orange border around it. I kind of wish I went with a lighter color so it popped a little more. This, I'll still keep it kind of loose, you know, generally following the edge, but also not being too worried about making little mistakes here and there. I'm going to add some kind of bumps and little grimy things. So now I'm going to move on to the highlights. It's kind of hard to explain, but you're going to want to highlight mainly the center line in places where the bevel faces forward. If it goes back into sort of a corner, that wouldn't get a highlight. If you wanted, you could go in there with a darker color and add like a little shadow detail in there, but I didn't do that in this case. So with the highlights, I want it to be sort of kind of broken up, and that kind of gives it a look like the edges maybe have dents and they're a little bit battered. That kind of lends itself to this style. And I'm also trying my best to just push the cap down enough to let out a little bit of paint, so you get this weird sort of thin, kind of sputtery line. Then I'm going to add a little bit of glowing areas here and there to look like the light's kind of popping off of a little edge. So the last thing that I'm doing is just adding a slight bit of shadow detail where the letters overlap. This obviously would be easier with transparent black, but in this case I'm just doing light mists of the black hardcore. So obviously up close it looks totally a mess, but from a distance it has the look I was going for. It's kind of like messy but intentional. Some of it obviously, you know, where I just messed up and that's just is what it is. But overall, I do find this kind of style of painting is very freeing. It takes a lot of pressure off me, and it's a lot of fun. Let me know if you have any questions or anything in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and thank you for your time.